All right, so to get ready for today, I really had to just kind of tune in to what was going on and what life wanted me to share. Um, I noticed that I had a bit of melancholy over the past week. I had some sadness sort of descend upon me, and I have a feeling I know why. But as a very good friend tells me, the why doesn't matter. And really, that means when I start getting into my mind, thinking about why, it's really distracting me from the message that wants to come through. Um, and so, what I what I thought of is, what my heartache wanted was soothing. It wanted a balm. And when I thought more deeply about what that might be, um, some words came to me. And so I'm going to share those with you today. Um, the words were forgiveness, amends, and reconciliation. And they didn't necessarily come to me in that order, but that's the order we're going to take them on today. So the first one I want to talk to you about is forgiveness. And I have a confession. And that is that I have a bit of a contentious relationship with this word. And in my opinion, it's sometimes used to bypass some real and difficult feelings that happen in relation to having been harmed. And we're told that letting someone off the hook for their actions is somehow good for us. And I have a difficult time with this. I think that not addressing the harm or there being no consequences for the harm puts the pressure on the person who was harmed to get over it, to be the bigger person, to let it go. And what if they can't do that? Then the responsibility goes to the person who was harmed. The responsibility for that harmful action is shifted, and they become the problem. And the person who perpetrated the harm in the beginning, the original person, is written completely out of the story. So I've shared with you, these are my protests. This is how I protest against the word forgiveness. However, I do get it. I understand the point of it all. And that is that hanging on to bitterness, to resentment, to rage, to fear, ultimately harms the person doing the hanging on, harms us. We've probably all heard the saying, it's like taking poison and hoping the other person will die. I mean, that's funny because it's absurd. Of course, they're not going to die. And I think sometimes holding on to those feelings, the resentments or whatever, it feels like protection. It feels like armor. But the truth is, it's not protective at all. It doesn't save us from further harm. And it actually causes more harm to ourselves because it's pretty well documented that toxic stress can cause all sorts of illness. So despite my resistance maybe to forgiveness, it is in our own best interest to do the work of letting that stuff go. And now I did say the word work on purpose because it's not typically easy and it's not typically quick. It takes effort, it takes intention, and it takes time. So the way I actually started to make friends with this word forgiveness is I learned how to look at it in a bit of a different way. And as I mentioned, we've been taught that to forgive is the same thing as pardoning, as the same thing to, saying, oh, it's okay. However, I learned that in Aramaic, which is the language spoken by Yeshua, that the word forgiveness actually means to untie or cut. So when Yeshua spoke about forgiveness, what he was really talking about was undoing, untangling, untying the errors in our thinking. So the things we think about ourselves, the things we think about other people, the things we think about the world. And I call them these stories. That's what my name for these errors in thinking. And typically they get stored in our unconscious and we don't even necessarily know that they're there. It's that good old childhood operating system that Joe talks about. You know, these programs drive us in ways that we can be completely unaware of. But by doing this untangling process, you can kind of get beneath the surface and see what's driving the behavior. And once you do, it's easier, it's possible to undo that and to completely change things. And I have a little story that illustrates this. I was talking to a woman who works with people who have committed crimes. And in the conversation, it became clear to me that she is able to see their humanity that lies beneath the facade of their actions, their humanity that gets veiled by the crimes that they commit. And she's able to pull on the threads of things like their life experience, wrong perceptions, erroneous thinking that led to the current outcome, led them to the situation that they happen to be in. And in seeing their humanity, that flawed and vulnerable humanness, what I found so interesting, and this is a revelation to me, is that she is also opening up the door to seeing their divinity. It's allowing their beautiful light to shine. It's allowing their innate goodness to come to the forefront. And this is something that we all possess, but sometimes it gets hidden and sometimes it gets veiled beneath our actions and the labels that we get tagged with due to our actions. So this is the kind of untangling, following those little threads of misunderstanding. That's the kind of forgiveness that Yeshua is talking about. And that's the kind of forgiveness that I practice. And that's what is a soothing balm when I am in a painful place. The next thing I want to talk to you about is amends. And if you've ever been in a 12-step program, you've probably heard this word maybe a lot. And making an amend is very different from an apology. An apology is just saying, I'm sorry. And often that's it. The behavior can continue. And if it does, saying I'm sorry doesn't remedy anything. And eventually those words lose all their meaning. Making an amend is owning up to the transgression, making an apology for it, and then making changes or shifting in such a way that that action hopefully doesn't happen again, or it happens less, and the offense doesn't continue. So the 12 steps are a progression. What we're talking about here is kind of in the middle, steps 8, 9, and 10. I don't recommend that you just jump into steps 8, 9, and 10 because the ones that come before are kind of getting you ready. But I do want to read these steps to you because it does really outline the amends process. And so step 8 is make a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9 is make direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And then step 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So I can say from my experience that there is a tremendous amount of freedom and relief that comes from this process of owning up and taking responsibility. It's a release. It's a release from shame, from hiding, and it opens up space so that energy that was taken up by hiding, by camouflaging that shame, is available for something else. So it's a cleansing or a clearing. I keep thinking about the saying, keep your side of the street clean, right? It's like, make sure my area is tidy. And other people's areas are none of my business, actually. And notice that it's not a one and done either. You don't just do it and that's it, because life is an ongoing process. So when I become aware that I've stepped on someone's toes, I can go through this amends process and clean that up, and I don't have to carry it forward with me. And I remembered when I was writing about amends or thinking about it that I forget to put myself on that list of people to make amends to. And self-compassion can be hard. That's one of the last things I think about sometimes. But it's very true that any harms I've done to myself, I can also put through this series of steps and make amends to myself. And so, things like not speaking my truth. I can take steps to stop doing the same thing over and over again that harms me. And then the last word that I have on my list is reconciliation. And now, this is actually the first thing I thought of when I realized that I had this achy heart that needed comforting. It's a process that I have used, and I know that it brings me comfort and peace. I've taught it to my son, and I have actually shared it here before. So this might be a refresher for some of you, or it might be brand new. It is the ancient Hawaiian practice of Ho'oponopono. And I want to be very clear that I am borrowing this from Indigenous Hawaiian people. I am by no means an expert. I would strongly recommend that you, if you want to dig into this a little bit, that you seek out a teacher from the Hawaiian culture. And I actually found someone, and I will potentially maybe put that in the notes on this YouTube recording so that people can find it. Because I think it's very important to get it from the source. And I am not the source. I'm just passing it on to you. So the word ho'oponopono can be translated to making things right. And it's a way of resolving conflict in your relationships, whether that is with other people, it can include your ancestors, it can include the earth, and it can include yourself. There are 4 energies that are involved in this process. They are repentance, forgiveness, gratitude, and love. And in this prayer, we are invoking the power of these 4 qualities. We're tapping into the energy of each of the qualities. And there are 4 phrases that go with this. The first is, I'm sorry, which we can think of as an amend. That's the repentance piece. It stirs up a sense of humility, of being teachable, and responsibility. Please forgive me is the second one. And we can think about forgiveness in the Aramaic sense, which is to untangle the misunderstanding that has happened within the conflict. Thank you, of course, is gratitude. And that generates a sense of receptivity, of abundance, of generosity. And I love you resonates the frequency of love. And when we're looking at anything through the lens of love, we can see it differently. And when I am in a space of love, it also stirs up that space of love with anyone that I happen to be interacting with. So in my practice, I've used this as a way to reconcile or make amends for situations that have seemed totally impossible. And some examples are people who have passed away, a younger version of myself, or past interactions with someone else. And I think what's happening is that when we when we do this practice, we're entering the unified field. And that place of connectedness is where anything is possible. And so there's a lot of power in tapping into these energetic frequencies. And when we get ready for our meditation, which we're about to do, I'm going to give us all the opportunity to do this practice. So I think that that ends what I had to say. So we can stop the recording and transition.